Turning now to yet another report of foreign meddling in Canada. According to the Globe and Mail, Canada's spy agency says Beijing allegedly interfered in Vancouver's municipal politics. Citing a January 22 CSIS memo, the report says, 2022, the report says China's then Consul General Tong Xiaoling sought to cultivate pro-Beijing politicians ahead of the municipal election in October of last year. This is the same Consul General who allegedly boasted about how she helped defeat two Conservative MPs in the 2021 federal election. The incumbent mayor, Kennedy Stewart, ultimately lost that municipal election, and in the lead-up to it, Stewart says he was briefed by the spy agency about the risk of potential foreign interference. And Kennedy Stewart joins me now. Mr. Stewart, thanks so much for joining me.
Hi, thanks for having me. And first, let me express my condolences to the families of the two officers. That's just horrible news for anybody to hear.
Yes, sir. That's kind of you to do that. On the story in the Globe today about the alleged interference, you told the Globe you believe you were a target of Beijing-backed meddling. Why do you believe you were targeted?
Well, back in May, CSIS scheduled a meeting with me, and I had lots of meetings, but never one with CSIS. And they spent 2 hours, one of the high-ranking CSIS official and a specialist from their China desk, briefing me and my chief of staff about, what foreign interference is, the kind of basic stuff, but then asking a ton of questions about what we were noticing. And when I asked them about why they were briefing me, they said, well, we've been sending reports up the chain and nobody's paying any attention. So they thought somebody should know. So that's why they came and, said it to me. And then I said, well, what do you want me to do about it? And being CSIS, they don't really answer questions, so that was the extent of it. It was a long briefing, and there have been follow-up meetings, but it wasn't until I talked with the Globe and Mail editorial staff and reporters that I now understand at least why CSIS was concerned. But that's post-election now, so that's the way it goes.
Sending reports up the chain, but nobody paying attention, that's exactly what they said to you? Did they give you a sense of where the chain was, whether this was the CSIS chain or the political chain? Do you have any idea what they meant by that?
I don't. I mean, it was highly unusual, though. I mean, like, I'm a mayor of a city. Why is CSIS briefing me? And that's for them, to answer. But for me, I was pretty trounced in the election. Like, I lost by 37,000 votes, which is a big margin out here. So I don't think foreign interference caused my loss. But as I'm a professor of political science here at the School of Public Policy at SFU, and I'd be deeply concerned about a very aggressive interference at any level of elections, whether it's federal, where I also sat for 2 terms in the House of Commons, or here at the city, and this needs to get looked into. And I'm glad the Governor General David Johnson's coming in to start doing that.
Okay, CSIS asked you if you were noticing anything. Did you see anything? What did things look like on the ground for you that might suggest there was some sort of foreign interference in the municipal campaign?
Well, again, as mayor in election, you are kind of going to event, and you're not involved in the day-to-day booking who goes where. But you always have whisperings here about busloads of folks going here and there, and that's very common. Any official would hear that. So I didn't raise it before because I didn't think there was any evidence of it. But what the Globe and Mail told me is that they have recordings. CSIS has recordings of conversations between the consul general, the Chinese consul general here, and folks on the ground. And then so they read me of what they had, these transcripts of these recordings, and that's I was off the record until that point, but I thought I would add my voice to calling for an inquiry or extra work into this, because who has the tools other than the federal government to investigate this?
So the Globe and Mail has filled you in on a lot of this. What exactly did CSIS tell you in this briefing? I know they told you to be on the lookout for it and they had concerns about it, but did they give you any specifics as to what was actually happening and what was going on? What can you tell us?
Well, they were telling me that the consul. I mean, it's no secret that the consul general didn't like me, because we initially were friendly, and then I took a very strong stance on Taiwan. I had a new program where I was going to have Kaohsiung be a friendship city with the city, and the consul general publicly denounced this many times, and so I was picking up from folks on the ground saying that they are actively out there working against me in the election. I don't really know what that means. I don't have any way of surveilling anything. I don't, the Vancouver Police Department can't really investigate its own municipality, so I have really nowhere to go to look into any of this stuff. So I just proceeded with my election as I would, and now back here at the university. But now as a deeply concerned Canadian saying, hey, there's enough smoke here that we should be looking into this, and I'm glad David Johnson has been charged with that.
So did CSIS tell you specifically that it was Beijing that was actively working to defeat you, or was it Beijing looking to elect a Chinese-friendly candidate or a China-friendly candidate? Can you tell us any specifics of what they told you the intention of all of this was?
The suggestion was they wanted somebody else's mayor. That they were deeply unhappy with my. I had cut off all communications with the consul general after they threatened to arrest my friend Michael Chong and Jenny Kwan, who are noted parliamentarians. And I just said, look, my schedule is full. I don't need to talk to the Chinese consul general anymore. I'm a friend of Taiwan, and I kind of left it at that. At that point, I have a lot of my desk as a mayor, and I kind of left it to the, I knew, but I told CSIS this will come out in my calendar. It will be public, and they were fine with that. In fact, they preferred that. And I said, well, what do I tell people when they ask me why were you meeting with CSIS? And they just left that up to me. So I'm just telling you what I've told other media sources, that they were concerned. Nobody was paying attention. That's why they were briefing me, and then that was it.
I wonder if they gave you any more specifics on that point of that nobody was paying attention. They're running it up the chain, and they're getting frustrated with this. Because this, that has been the theory, that is the motivation behind a lot of the leaks that we're seeing and the people's decision to speak and share information with the Globe and Mail and Global News and others. Did you get your impression in the conversation they were fed up with a lack of political action, or what impression did they leave you with on that?
It was. I asked them. I said, "This is a fairly unusual step," and they're like, "Yes, it is." To give you a sense of the conversation and why are you doing this? We think people should know is, and it was two people. It wasn't one person that was a disgruntled employee or something. And there have been follow-up meetings, and I know there were briefings with other people. What I'd be more concerned about, though, is that what I was told by the Globe and Mail editorial staff is they actually have recordings of people talking to the consul general about this, and they had access to transcribe recordings of whether they're wiretaps or whatever. I would think this is something that if I was in CSIS or in the cabinet, this needs to be looked at. And municipalities are so vulnerable to election interference. You have a big election coming up in Toronto. What's going on there? Who's looking at how these elections are being conducted? What information, if any, is available? Maybe there's nothing, but we should know that.
We have a special rapporteur now. David Johnson has been appointed to this, and you think that is a good choice based on the comments you've made earlier in this conversation. But his mandate is, as it is right now, likely limited to just the last two federal elections. There's no direction there necessary to look into municipal elections, provincial elections. Do you think the rapporteur's mandate needs to be broadened? Do you think we need a public inquiry into all of this?
Yeah, I think we're kind of heading in that direction. We either care about our democracy or we don't, right? If this was the headline of the New York Times and they said that there was good evidence, including transcripts saying that there had been interference in the New York City election, the FBI and all those folks would be all over this, but we seem kind of stuck on, oh, is this real or not? And should we investigate local elections? Absolutely. All parts of our democracy the world is turning here. It's not the 90s where democracies are expanding. We're shrinking across the world. And there's folks that are aggressive with us that have not been aggressive in the past. And they're very boldly trying to influence our politics here, influence our business, and kidnap our citizens like the two Michaels. Come on. Let's get to this, and why would we limit it to the federal level? And I think the Governor General would have the is recommending back to the cabinet at least what should be done, and I would hope that David Johnston would include nominations for parties as well as elections in at least the big cities.
Just one last question. You were told by the Globe that there are recordings and transcripts of conversations between the Consul General and operatives on the ground who would be tasked with doing whatever in the elections. This is Tong.
Oh no, with elected officials.
With elected officials.
Yeah.
At the municipal level, provincial level?
Yeah. Municipal level.
At the municipal level. What do you make of the fact that Tong Xiaoling, the Consul General, was allowed to just leave the country 8 months after a lot of this stuff allegedly happened, was not expelled by the Canadian government, and there are no active police investigations into any of this as far as we know?
Yeah, well, I'm sure she's going back to China to enjoy a great promotion because, I mean, I was at many functions where she came into the functions and berated the Canadian government in front of large audiences, specifically the Prime Minister denouncing his actions, especially during the Huawei tension stuff. Like, this person has been very active. I mean, police officers were in the room during those talks, right? So like, it's almost like China realizes that nobody here in Canada cares. They can come in and do whatever they want. And we're just turning a blind eye to this, which is really worrying. Like, do we care about our democracy or don't we? And I can tell you, in the UK or Australia or the US, this would have serious red flags. But we seem to be naive, I think, in terms of, and maybe there's nothing here, but we need to establish that, and we haven't.
All right, well, Kennedy Stewart, I want to thank you for joining us tonight. We really appreciate your time. That's former Mayor of Vancouver, Kennedy Stewart.